Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and we're joined here tonight in the studio by Dr. Mohamed Azzam, the board member of the International Association of the Management of Technology and also the member of the Global Digital Commission at the International Chamber of Commerce. Dr. Azzam, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, and always pleasure and honor being with you.
Pleasure is ours. Dr. Azzam, first off, this is the third version of the IATF 2023. The first one was in 2018, hosted here in Egypt. The second one was hosted in South Africa.
Yes.
And now the third one, the president inaugurated it. And really, I mean, it could have been just inaugurated by the Prime Minister or the Ministers of Finance or such, but the president really wanted to highlight the importance Egypt is giving to the African trade within the African continent. Obviously, this is in light of the developmental work, the Sustainable Development Plan for 2063 for the whole of the African continent, also within the African Free Trade Area and Agreement. Now, how important is such affair, such a very important event taking place in Egypt for the third time and at such a critical time?
Thank you for this question. Actually, Egypt is always keen of building and establishing economic ties with the African continent and African countries, because not only for the reason that the African continent is considered a green market, and also it represents great opportunities for collaboration with respect to trade, with respect to manufacturing goods and providing services to the African countries. Because of the size of the African market, we are talking here about almost 1.4 billion population, which is huge, as well as the GDP of the African continent is something like 3.3 trillion US dollars, and is growing. The African countries are considered one of the most growing countries all over the world when it comes to the GDP. Which represent an opportunity for us all as African nations and African business people and African traders to establish and open channels for communication, exploring the mutual opportunities altogether, finding solutions for the most pressing issues that we are facing since COVID-19, and after that the crisis in Ukraine, and after that the crisis in Gaza, that we need to have a resilient economy. And the only way to have a resilient economy is to build a resilient economies on the regional level. This is one of the lessons learned by COVID and by the crisis, political crisis and war in Ukraine, and now even the war in Gaza. You cannot have a resilient economy globally unless you have a resilient economy on the local level, and to build resilient economy on the regional level. And the only way to do so is to open channels between countries, to open channels between trade organization or the business organizations, and to open channels between the business people, to open channels between the great minds, the youth and the entrepreneurs, especially in the domain of high-tech and technology in general, to have a sort of knowledge transfer from the countries owning the knowledge or having the knowledge in specific areas, and the other countries that lagging such knowledge, and to have a real partnership that based on real value, on real developmental objectives. And of course, this is the only way to accomplish the resilient economy nationally and even regionally. And to boost the global GDP or even the continental GDP by such cooperation, and it needs a well, and we've seen this well. By having the head of state opening such a very important event, showing this political will from Egypt that is quite keen to strengthen the economic and social ties between Egypt and other countries within the continent. And we've seen even so many developmental projects that are taking place in Egypt that's considering Africa, like the logistics hubs, like the Cairo-Johannesburg highway, and even in collaboration with the super economic powers all over the world, especially if you consider the Belt and Road Initiative by the Chinese government. And this is the only way, is to open channels, to open dialogue, to discuss our challenges, to find solutions for our challenges. We need to boost our economy. We need to have more investment to the continent. And of course, Africa is always very attractive to the investment community because of the size of the population and as well as the opportunity that is almost green market for everyone. So this is an opportunity for Egypt to start building such ties, to start producing goods and services of international quality, to be able to export such products and services to the African continent, as well as exploring the opportunity of mutual cooperation, either here in Egypt or in other African countries, especially in the domain of energy, especially the domain of renewable energy, because Egypt is now excelling in such a domain, especially the renewable energy, the green hydrogen projects that are taking place nowadays in our Suez Canal economic zone and Upper Egypt. So the energy domain, the manufacturing domain, the agriculture domain as well, because we are facing all over the world an issue of food security, and without such collaboration, this is one of the way to overcome such challenge, the global challenge of disrupting the value chain, the supply chain, especially in the food domain. And Africa could be a great source for food to the African countries as well as to the other part of the world. So it's a very comprehensive approach, and for having such very important conference and event for the second time within just a few years, this shows Egypt, and represented by the head of state, President Sisi, is quite keen to boost such essential and critical relationship between Egypt and other countries
in Africa.
The continent.
Well, the President reiterated how Africa has great potential and so many opportunities, and obviously Africa is well known to be rich in its natural resources. A lot of investors, a lot of businessmen who are exporting to the rest of the international community as well, they're always complaining about exporting natural resources, raw materials, and then the international communities or countries on other continents, they get the raw materials, they manufacture it, and they have their own final products, which we then buy. And that's really considered a loss. So how far are we in terms of not selling our natural resources and mainly manufacturing and producing finalized products, having our own value added to the raw materials and really maximizing on it, not just like internationally exporting it, but also exporting it within the African continent?
Actually, one of the major objectives of such conference is modernizing Africa and industrialize Africa to solve this issue. You cannot be a competitive nation just by exporting your natural resources. This is the least of the value chain. So you need to add value, as you just mentioned, to the natural resources by having products and services that could benefit from the natural resources. And this needs a lot of investment. This needs having a sort of knowledge transfer. This needs collaboration and cooperation between the African countries and the international community, because you cannot do all of things by yourself. Not anymore in this 21st century, very connected, very competitive and economic environment. So you need to have a sort of knowledge transfer. You need to invest in education. You need to invest in R&D, research and development institutions. You need to invest in more technology into your industrial and trade ecosystem. Actually, you need to employ the fourth industrial revolution concepts and notions and technologies when it comes to manufacturing to be able to have a sort of economy of scale products as a service, because actually due to the development of the fourth industrial revolution concepts, every country could have economy of scale. And by having economy of scale, you cannot export your local markets or to the regional markets. Your market by default is becoming the global market. So that's why if you need to be a global competitor and to have a sort of competitive edge over the competition, because the competition by nature now is becoming a global competition, you need to have knowledge transfer from the most advanced countries and companies. You need to invest and own and develop your own technology by investing in R&D facilities, in universities, in having qualified engineers, technicians, you have qualified scientists, and combining the efforts of the academia with the efforts of the industry, and having focused R&D, applied R&D towards boosting the competitiveness of your local industry. So it's a value chain that you need to consider from a holistic approach. You cannot do this alone. You need to have partnership for sure. And we've seen a lot of partnership activities are taking place here in Egypt. If we're talking about the Egyptian case, we've seen a lot of joint venture projects that are taking place all over the country, and part of it, a mandate of such cooperation projects or such a new project is to have a sort of knowledge transfer to the Egyptian engineers and technicians and scientists to be able to develop such technology and to maintain the competitive edge by adding more innovative ideas and innovative approaches with respect to the product as a technology by itself and the production as a technology and the whole process, because the technology serving actually the products, the production, and the whole supply chain. And of course, this is not an easy task. And this is also part of the mandate of Africa, the African Agenda 2063. Of course, this will need to revisit the education system, to revisit your manufacturing practices, your trade practices. You need to modernize your manufacturing facilities. You need to modernize your trade ecosystem. That's why you need to have up-to-date advanced sea and airports. And we've seen a lot of development in this particular domain in Egypt. We've seen a huge investment in air and seaports to cater the demands of the international and cater the dynamics of the international trade, I would say. And we've seen a lot of investment in renewable energy. We've seen a lot of investment in even physical infrastructure. That we've seen the very ambitious project of Cairo-Johannesburg highway. This is because some of the countries, they don't have a place or they are considered contained countries, that they don't have access to sea. And of course this hindering the trade, of course, because the sea trade or the trade using this kind of transportation is mainly the main vehicle for international trade because of the saving cost, of course, and making the prices more competitive. You cannot use air freight all the time. Air cargo is very expensive. Of course, it's faster, but however, it's very expensive. It's very polluting as well. So this is, we are working within an holistic approach, which is the beauty here, that you are not investing in manufacturing plants or manufacturing facilities, but also you are considering quality, and you are considering have a sort of knowledge transfer to gain the know-how of such advanced technologies, and to be able to produce products up to the international
Yes.
level, because quality matters now, and no one will buy something that does not meet the international quality standards, because otherwise I can get it from anyone else.
Yes.
This is the nature of and the dynamics of the trade ecosystem all over the world. And of course, technology is always there, and without technology, you wouldn't be able to be or you wouldn't be able to have a competitive industrial companies or enterprises and institutions, and you wouldn't be able to have a competitive, dynamic trade ecosystem that capable to cater such a production, the quality production again, and take it to the international markets according to the international tastes, because you are addressing different markets.
Yes.
So it's very sophisticated, but the beauty here that we are hosting such a very important event for the second time in Egypt. We've seen like 1,600 exhibitors coming from more than 70 countries, 40,
75.
Almost 75, yes, and something like 43 countries are out of the 75 are from Africa, so it shows that you cannot do it alone. You are working in collaboration with major players, the industrial players and trade players all over the world, that including the East, including the West, and including, of course, the many African countries. So it's very dynamic, and the beauty here, we as Egypt are connecting dots.
Well, talking about the quality and really raising the standard of the quality, I mean, meeting the international standard, quality standards. Now, this is an intra-Africa trade fair, and it really works on strengthening and alleviating the standard and the level of trade and economic cooperation between African states within the African continent. But how strong and prepared are the African states and their economies in terms of really working and developing on intra-African trade instead of also depending on cross-continental trade? How much, as you've mentioned, the technological aspect of it, how well are we prepared with the technological expertise, the know-how in actually being able to be self-sufficient within the African continent and really try and replace much more cross-continental trade?
This is very important, actually, because if you'd like to have such a competitive ecosystem, you need to link both physical and virtual worlds.
Yes.
And of course, if you'd like to do so, you need to have technology up to the maximum in every single step along your value chain. That including the artificial intelligence, that including the computer vision, that including the using of sensors, robotic manufacturing, or what's called robotic, using robotics to the maximum within the industrial sector. That needs to have a sort of e-commerce platform that is meeting the international standards and following the international standards.
Yes.
You need to have financial inclusion across the continent. You need to have also the ability to even integrate your wholesalers, your retailers, and even your customers, because actually if we are heading towards what's called self-thinking supply chain ecosystem, and it starts from or triggered by the order from a customer within any place in the world, that triggers the whole value chain to be able to manufacture such products according to the such a level of high customization that we are facing, because we are not living in a mass production era anymore. We are living in customized production. Actually, people are able to customize even their personal products and services to the maximum, and this is the nature actually of our era today. So to be able to meet such very sophisticated dynamics when it comes to customization, you need to have the whole ecosystem all connected, You cannot connect the manufacturer to the end user from field to table, as we always say. And this, the only way is to employ technology to the maximum. Of course, we don't have all such technologies, or you cannot develop all such technologies in-house. Of course, this would be great if you would be able to develop such technologies in-house. However, that's also another venue of cooperation. This, you need to have joint R&D projects. You need to have sort of alliances within the ecosystem, especially with the high-tech companies or the leading industry players in e-commerce, for example, from China or from the United States or from Europe, to have a sort of knowledge transfer in this domain. You need to connect the African trade ecosystem altogether by high-speed internet that is capable to cater such demands, and to have the holistic 36-degree sort of approach that you're seeing the whole picture, to able to fulfill the requirements of your customer domestically or regionally, all over the continent, or even internationally. You need to mitigate the duplication. Of course, this would save a lot of money and would save a lot of efforts, and to have a sort of focused investment in such regards. And this is only done by sharing the data altogether. And sharing the data is becoming also one of the main aspects. Actually, the UN will announce 2025 to 2035 the decade of data. So the data, by sharing the data, you would be able to plan, you would be able to mitigate risk, you would be able to eradicate redundancy and eradicate duplication. So this is a very dynamic thing, that there's not only one aspect that you need to focus on. Actually, you need to focus on a lot of aspects to build a really what's called self-resilient and self-thinking supply chain that is catering everyone and seamlessly, which is very important. And you cannot do this unless you employ the technology, state-of-the-art technology, actually, to the maximum every single step along the value chain, as I said before.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the event is being hosted by Egypt in Cairo for the second time, and really Egypt is also focusing on its relationship and trade relationship and connection between the rest of the African states. Now, according to CAPMAS, the Egyptian-African trade for the first 8 months of this year have reached $5.8 billion already. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.